Hey, Diggers, welcome to the podcast here on beautiful Sunday morning, New Year's Eve. Actually, this will be edited, so you won't see it on New Year's Eve. But anyway, got the East Coast Digger with me, um, who, in fact, just went to the track yesterday for Coastal Plains New Year's Bash. What's going on over there, East Coast Digger?
It's cold.
Cold? Yeah, it's here, here too. I got my beanie on.
Yeah.
Um,
Probably
so,
the coldest day of racing for the entire year. I mean, trying to think if last New Year's bash was on the 31st of last December or if it was actually on the 1st of this year. I don't remember, but um, it definitely was chilly. It probably didn't hit 50 until like 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
oh wow. So tell us how the day went. How was you said that it's was pretty chilly out. What how was the track conditions? What kind of elevation did you get and just how
Well,
did it go?
we were running negative density altitudes. Like I think at most it was like negative 900 feet, So, I mean,
Oh,
good air, right? It's cold, dense air, but it was also humid air. I mean, starting off the day, it was like 78% humidity. So even though it sounds like, oh, yeah, the air is really cool and dense, it had a lot of moisture in it too, which I think I mean, it's going to affect all engines, but if you're running alcohol, I've just noticed that it's much more affected by moisture than it is temperature. So, that's just something I keep an extra eye on is like water grains and, um, relative humidity. That's an important factor for my engine. But yeah, it was cold. And, I kind of went up there treating this like a test and tune in a way because I had not expected to go to this race. Just kind of worked out that I had a chance to go and run, but I thought I'd be probably down through the off season until springtime because I was chasing problems. The last race I went to was at Coastal Plains for their Thanksgiving race in November. And I still had issues where the car was short shifting, meaning like I would let go of the trans brake button, the car would start to move and launch, and it would almost immediately shift into high. So I was like making high gear only passes, but it was intermittent, it wasn't all the time. So I'd get through a couple of runs and then I'd be, 3/10 slow because I'd make this basically high gear only run. So I was chasing that, trying to figure out where in the electronics of my car I was having an issue. I replaced some more connectors. So I looked at this like a test and tune that, hey, I had done a lot of the work I meant to do, put a new flex plate on the car because I'd knocked some teeth out of that at the last race too. Uh, put a second battery in. I was hopeful to try to like get an alternator somehow finagled into my car, but there just isn't space. It's kind of tight between where my seat is and the front of the engine. So I just couldn't make it work for an alternator. So I opted for running a second battery. So just all these different things. How is that all going to function? And you know, the takeaway is that I didn't have any trouble with the car this weekend at all. Like all the problems were with me. I couldn't find my spot on the starting line. Like my test pass, I thought I was good. I was like, yeah, I'm 11. And then I was first round, I got lucky. The other guy was like 9 red. I was 2 red. And then the next round, I was like 40 green. I only put like 5 numbers in the box thinking, oh, I'll be okay. But I also kind of switched lanes and I just missed it. So the guy had plenty of room to cut it close. He almost gave it back. I want to say he made it. He took it like a seventh out stripe. I don't know if he meant to,
yeah, yeah,
but I
yeah.
almost squeezed around him. Um, and then in the next round, round three, where I was finally done, I went red by 8 thou, I think. So
Okay.
I just couldn't really. I was doing a terrible job on the starting line of finding my spot, but the car was problem free and it repeated very well. Considering the track conditions, you'd think, well, it was really cold. And I thought we would get more sun through the day than we did. We actually had a fair bit of cloud cover through most of the day. It wasn't until probably 2, 3 in the afternoon that the sun really started to shine a bit.
Right.
But kudos to the guys at Coastal Plains. They did a pretty good job with a cold track, and I didn't have any problems. I think really getting a hold of the track at all. I had gone up on my launch too, so I mean, if it was gonna not hook and blow the tires off, it would have done it. So
Right.
the car, I was able to repeat every number I stuck on the car, it ran. I was like dead on my dial every time. So it was just my starting line stuff on me, which I can work on that. It's I was just happy that the car was problem free.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're beginning and ending the season in one weekend.
Yeah, really.
Well, it sounds like it was a win-win. I mean, you didn't really do as good as you would have liked to in eliminations, but it sounds like you eliminated all the bugs that would have caused you to, not, you know, gain more rounds at a further race. So that sounds like you got that fixed. So that's good.
Yeah, there's really nothing more frustrating. I mean, it's frustrating when you go red or you give it back or you do something that's like, ah man, I goofed that up. But it's really frustrating when you leave the track and you're scratching your head, why the car's not operating right? Like, why is it having problems? And it's these weird little problems that you have to go searching for and try to be detective on. So when you leave the track and everything's in one piece and everything's working right and you don't have to worry about what the car is doing, that's at least a good feeling.
Yeah, I hear you. That's kind of what we talk about a lot with leaving the car and the trailer for an extended period of time and, getting to the track and, that first startup of the weekend, you're like, oh boy, please let's not have any issues. And, I was kind of sitting here the other night thinking while watching the football games, like it's kind of weird with racing. You have your weekend, you get back to the house and you're back in life mode, but as you sit and think about your weekend, you kind of tend to remember things that you didn't remember at the track. And I had talked to you about this a couple weeks ago about how there was a wire that I found that I don't know where it came from, and I remember now. Um, it just totally came back to me. I don't know how, but I did one of the burnouts at XRP, and I remember backing up and getting the car in neutral, and I look down and I see a wire flopping around. Oh shoot! What the heck is this? And so it didn't seem to affect anything, and I was sitting there before going in, like, oh, okay, where's this wire going? And so I got back and when we when I started downloading runs, I kind of looked and traced the wire. It's just my little purge wire for the nitrous. So I just stuck it aside. But as you said, the little bugs like that can get you. But anyway, well, it sounds like you had a pretty successful day, despite could have gone worse. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about racing and like challenges with the car, they can be frustrating, but I think it's also important to point out like they're good in a way because they find, the problems come up because there's weak points, right? I mean, and you need to find those weak points to make the car
yep,
better. And if that's loose connections that are old that need to be replaced, if it's, wires that have worn themselves, on a rub point or something and now they're shorting, if it's a solenoid that's bad, like you've got to find the problem. You've got to have the problem for you to be able to figure it out, right? And then make it right. So I try not to get too upset about problems and treat them more like, okay, this is the opportunity to figure it out and make it better. Um, and I think I've done that, especially with like some of these connections that I replaced for my trans brake solenoid and my shift solenoid. I think sometimes people just use like a butt connector and crimp them down when you're connecting two wires together. And I found that that was a number of weak points for me. that these
Yeah.
connections, while they seem like they were good inside
Yeah.
the butt, all it takes is a moment of losing that 12 volts or not enough current, and it's going to let go of that solenoid and it's not going to work right. So I
Yeah.
opted to get some of these, I don't know, they call them like automotive connectors. I should have grabbed one from the trailer, but basically like a 2-pin that allow you more like a modern connection that you'd see under the hood of your car that click together. So you crimp the ends, they go fit into these plastic fittings that then are snug, and because they're like crimped on with a tool in the end, and then the 2 pins and stuff, they lock together. So I got those locked together now and zip tied to the chassis so that really can't move. Makes a much better connection. And I think that's the bulk of where my issues were. And now I've got some better connections going on there. So
Right. Well, I mean, nobody wants to have those types of issues, but if you think of it in a positive type of way, which is what I need to do more myself, you can look at it as as a way to learn. So if it does happen again, you can get on it, get it fixed quick, and be done with it. But it sounds like you got it
And,
figured out there,
and
and
another
you're
thing I
yeah.
would share too in my electronic woes that I've learned, if anybody out there watching this is dealing with like a weak start situation where you feel like you're getting a lot of kickback all the time and you kind of have a noisy starter, if you will, I've been chasing that for a good long season or more. And lo and behold, really the problem came down to the lug. You've got your big thick cable coming to the starter that provides all that power to crank it over. And what you don't often see, especially if it's been on your car for a long time, is underneath where that lug is crimped to the cable, like underneath that can be corroded. It can get moisture in there over years, and you don't realize because you can't see it. It's taped up, or you even got a heat shrunk or something on there, that connection has gone south. And that's what it was for me. I had no idea for the longest time. I kept putting starters on. I kept knocking teeth out of flex plates,
Ah,
all because
yeah.
I wasn't flowing enough current to my starter. So the starter was always weak. And because with a weak starter, you're not getting the speed turning the engine over. You're not getting the good, like, uh, full current to really crank it over with power so that it can fight a higher compression engine. And all the difference was redoing that lug, which we found in a thrash at Rockingham, that trying to switch starters again, thinking the starter was the problem. The lug literally fell off in Dad's hand when he was trying to swap it out. It's like, oh, well, here's this problem. This lug's like barely on here anymore, and it's all like corroded and gross underneath. And you never know
Yeah.
it because it's under so much stuff. Fix that, running the other battery, and now the thing, I mean, I crank it over, you think I put a 16-volt battery on there. I mean, it really goes now.
Yeah, that's good. That's another alternate is two batteries as opposed to 16 volts. But well, that's good. You had a successful weekend. I want to talk a little bit about what we had touched briefly on before this podcast was the the different series of racing. Now this we're excluding like the NHRA, national, divisional, and regional events. We're excluding that from this conversation. We're talking about all the other really cool series that is out there in this country to run. So, I want to talk a little bit about you. You've got into some different series in your times. What have you run so far in your career? Would it be from when you had your Nova to when you had the radio car doing bracket racing, and now your big car, your dragster? What series did you run? Talk a little bit about that.
When I started out running my Nova, is just built to be a street car. It was my daily driver that, we intended to be able to go and run like sportsman or the street category at the local track level kind of a thing, and really just get experience running the car and learning how to stage and just all those things that come with learning how to participate in a drag race. That's a big part of, I think, kids are getting a chance to learn that a little sooner with things like juniors. Although I think even with juniors, it's a little, it's kind of ridiculous the money wrapped up in them these days. I mean, I
Yep.
see junior dragsters that are just as much to buy and get into as a regular bracket car that could go out and run, like mid to high sixes or something in the eighth mile. And you could go to any bracket race and run and operate. It's like that to me is totally off of what the whole point of the original junior program was, which was to be something
Yep.
affordable, safe, and give kids a chance to learn how to get into racing before they could, even have a driver's license. One of the things Coastal has done, to the chagrin of some, I mean, some people don't like it that, okay, they're not running juniors anymore, but they've opted now that they've joined the WDRA uh, sanctioning group. They've opted to pick up what is their team driving program. NHRA has something similar to this. They call it, I think, Junior Street. And that's where you can take just any street car. It can be, the daily driver the family owns, and you can be a teenager, under the age of 16, and you can drive the car down the drag strip. You can race. Your parent has to be in the other seat and ride along, but it's, I think, a really good thing because it's affordable. You don't have to go buy a race car. You don't have to buy a junior and get into a big race program. But just the way I came up, because I didn't run juniors, we're of that age where they just got started. And,
Yep.
you can talk more about running the junior because you did, but I didn't. And so I got into it just running the street program. But there's a ton of valuable experience just learning again how to stage a car, how to hit the tree, go down the track, and then start, learning about judging a finish line. That, it just takes seat time and repetition, and doing that in a street car, it's much more affordable because you don't have to have anything special to do it. You don't even need to have a helmet because you're going slow. So it's just a good, I think, opportunity to learn some of that, and like the etiquette that comes along with all of those things of like being a good participant in a drag race that you need to learn and get experience with. So uh,
Yeah.
that's where it started for me. Yeah, it was with the Nova and running local like Wednesday street drag stuff. And then, later I just kind of continued more with street level stuff because that's what I had. I had like an El Camino and stuff, again, like things that were my daily
Yeah.
driver, that I just wanted to go to the track. I wanted to go down the track. I wanted to get experience, making passes, and then, finally getting the opportunity to jump into the big car. um, my goal again was to really start out with like, I want to participate in whatever the local points programs were. And that's what I did. So just track programs. Every track, I think, does their own local points program that, feeds into larger divisional stuff. It doesn't matter what sanctioning body it is. Um,
Right.
and then this last season, I had a good start off with the points program in Rockingham. And that's why I stuck with pursuing that one, because I had kind of such a good start off that I thought I could do well if I kept with it. And they, again, they made a good program. It was affordable. It wasn't expensive. It was over what was like 3 weekends. So it wasn't like you had to hit 30 races and like be there every weekend, which would have been a lot harder for me. So they made it user friendly, so to speak, and budget friendly. And so that's why I hung with that one. So, I like the idea of supporting local tracks because they're close to me. It's affordable. It doesn't cost a lot to enter those races. Some of the big money races are starting to add in like tracking points and determine an MVP or a champion and give a bonus for that too. But, I just don't have the budget to play around with that kind of level of stuff. But so I think it's
Yeah.
just all in what you're willing to spend, how much you want to travel. I think there's something to be said for the travel aspect. Could be fun. They haven't I think in my area of North Carolina, I've heard this talked about in the past, like it was a thing they used to do, and maybe somebody might bring it back one day, would be a traveling series. Some of the other groups like this CCRA, which is the Carolinas Class Racer Association, and I think these other group called like Gear Jammers, they do where they travel track to track to track within a region for their points program. And that just adds kind of something more fun. Hey, you know, you're going to different tracks, you're getting to check out different facilities. It's within a region, so the travel's modest. It's not like you're having to drive 2 days, 3 days to get to a track. So, you know, there's
Yeah.
something to be said about that. Like maybe in the future, when you want to do more travel, that if there was an option like that, might be interesting to do.
Yeah, that's cool. There's so many series to do, and coming up from being um younger, I ran junior drag racing league mostly at Pomona because Pomona actually had a league and they raced pretty often, and that was cool. We pulled in with the big trailer and we pitted in the staging lanes is where the pit area was in Pomona when we ran, which was pretty cool. It was very organized. And I mean that when I was running that was in the beginning, right when the Naps had created that, so it was pretty fresh. I think the if I can remember, and this is so long ago, um, I would say probably the fastest car that I would have seen back then would probably been, I would say maybe in the nines or the tens. Don't quote me on that, but I don't remember it getting any faster than that. But I was coming up with like guys like Del Cox, uh, Dustin Lee, Josh Lee, Jeff Nelson, Sean Langdon was in there. I think he was just a little bit younger than me. And there was some other guys like the Val Torres. All of those guys were there. And then after that, we kind of graduated into, I think they had SoCal Super Comp and then Skeeta. SoCal Super Comp obviously had the index, but Skeeta is more like a bracket race. Ran that a little bit. And then after that, it was SoCal Super Eliminator, which was either 790 or 810, depending where you were. Palmdale was elevation, so that was 810 index, and then everywhere else was 790. And then we kind of got into um, SoCal Top Comp, which didn't really last a very long time. And then all that went away, and then there was only Top Dragster. And then, it's kind of cool to see all those series with moving back east to Ohio for a little bit. You have the NDRL, which is a Nostalgia Drag Racing League, which runs several different classes. And that's what I was going to try to run with that other car that I had built. And then also out that way was Jegs has their Super Quick series, which is 450 index. Thought that was pretty cool. Um, and then you see like all the, PDRA has all their classes. They're a different series. Not really sure what's down in like the Southeast. I'm sure there's something similar. But then moving back to the Midwest out here in Texas, you have the Midwest Drag Racing Series. Um, and then I think there's another cool series that runs those gassers. I think the gassers have their own series too, which I thought was pretty cool. And then, like I told you a few days ago, I think one of the newest ones I saw was Michigan is going to be running like a 4.0 door car class, like index, like pro mod top sportsman style. So I thought that was pretty cool. But there's just throughout the country, um, seems like excluding some regions. There's just so many cool associations that you can race in. It's pretty cool.
Lots of different choices. Choices and options are always good. Uh, one thing, one thing I think it would be interesting to see is at least in the bracket racing section of all of this is maybe getting into some different brackets again. You know, I think back to like talking to dad about days, and we mentioned this just on the other podcast about bracket one at OCIR and how there were a lot more brackets to break out speeds of the cars. You know,
Yeah.
lapse time, like, for running top ET, the rules are like really simple. You can have a trans brake, you can run a delay box, and it's like you got to be 799 or quicker, something like that, and it's so you've got, guys I've seen running dragsters 420s all the way down to guys dialed like 718 that basically want to run
Right.
they're foot braking it, and they want to run both the modified category and the top category at a race, and they just want to go round and round and round.
Right.
And that's all well and good. It's just like, okay, we're all lumped into one class, but if we've got 100 cars or more at an event, you know, wouldn't it be a lot more interesting to say, hey, we've got bracket one, and that's like 630 and quicker, or something where we're narrowing down the window of performance that cars are running together of similar performance and not have such big stretches in between. I just think personally that would be a little more interesting. It kind of, I got a taste of that a little bit running Rockingham. They did their program a little different than everybody else has done around here, in that they required the dragsters that were competing to run together for the first few rounds. So they always pulled dragsters together, and
Yeah.
performance wise, like I was typically always the slowest dragster running right around 5 flat. But then I was paired up against, anybody from 450 to like 480. And so the times were a little tighter. And I found that to be more, I thought, enjoyable, that, we were all kind of running similarly together, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to run this guy that's dialed, 680, and I'm going to sit here for a second before I even think about going. And
Right.
it's not a real big deal. I mean, that's how I've been racing, but I just think there would be something to it if tracks or promoters or somebody might think about bringing back classes again, more variety of classes, to allow smaller groupings of people to run together.
Yeah. Um, I kind of think that I haven't done a whole lot of bracket racing, not like you have. There is a few that that you can bring up. Like I just remembered a few times out at Pomona, they ran the Super Chevy Show. That was one thing that my dad actually won. I think it was the first one they had at Pomona. He won, and he got it was 3 grand to win that, and we
Wow.
won that. And then a couple years later, when I was able to get my license, we ran we ran it again. It kind of each year with that series, it kind of seemed to dwindle away. Um, but I remember, I don't remember what the class was called, but it's similar to bracket one where there was one round I remember I was dialed like 875 or something like that, and I raced a Camaro, and this guy dialed at the very top, like he was like I don't know, like 12 something. And man, that guy was way the hell down there. I was just, whoa. And I don't even remember what I cut on the light. I don't remember if I won. It was too long ago. I don't even, it might be in the logbook, but I don't know. But it was kind of exciting because that guy was way down. I'm like thinking, how the hell am I going to catch this guy? And I caught him. I mean, it was probably right in the lights, and I don't remember if I won or lost. I don't remember, but I did catch him. But that part where you've kind of with Eighth Mile, I get what you're saying. It's just to me, it's kind of exciting to see somebody with a big head start and the other guy come and put a wheel on him right in the lights and beat him, or whip out a package. So I just got the little time notice there. That's new. But there's just so many cool series, and I kind of agree with what you're saying a little bit on that on the different brackets. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, just something to segment it out. Or, the other thing, which could be something fun, um, and this kind of speaks more to like top dragster, but a qualifying element. I've thought with bracket racing where, hey, we're not, you know, bracket racing is really all about budget. And so we're not spending thousands and thousands trying to make our cars, be number one qualifier. But I think with bracket racing, there's a way to perhaps make it, they could do some kind of performance based um, pairing based off of package, since that's such the deal, and there are times where tracks will do something they call dial for dollars or dash for cash, where
Right.
a second time run is used, and if you want to pay 10-20 bucks to do that, all the money goes in a kitty, and then whoever has like the closest to their dial on that time run gets the
Yeah.
money. And that's kind of
Yeah.
fun. But if you can do that, then you could do a round of like let everybody put a dial on their car, and whoever's, number one package is your number one qualifier kind of thing, and
Yeah.
ladder it out that way, just as another spin of something different to do to
Yeah.
with the bracket race.
Yeah.
One thing that I tend to gripe about a lot on other, podcasts I watch or conversations I see online is the whole buyback situation. Um, that that gets to me and it's a double-edged sword. Like I get all the arguments around why it's helpful for tracks. It helps build the purse for them to have a decent purse to race for. So, I don't want to cry too bad about it against buybacks. And if you're new to racing and you want a lot of experience quickly, having buybacks is great because it affords you the chance to have more seat time at an event.
Right.
But
Right.
what I grumble about is how it makes a race take so much longer, because even like this race at Coastal where they had 2 rounds of buybacks, which is pretty typical for them, it takes 8 rounds to finish a bracket race. It's
Yeah.
like, wow, that's a long time, and they got it done pretty quickly to their, you know kudos to them. I mean, they're running a tight operation there, but still, to me, it's like that's a lot of racing. If you're
Right.
perfect and you don't buy back at all and you get through the end of it, you've run, through 8 rounds to finish out the day. That seems like a lot. It really drags it out.
Right.
Doesn't maybe have to. And
Right.
I think programs out by you, like at XRP, I think does this, but um, instead of a buyback, I like the idea of a consolation race, a race within a race, meaning to say, like, hey, everybody who's out first round, if you want to buy back into this second race,
Yeah. Yep.
purse is less, but
Yep.
it gives you the chance to go and race in another, consolation group race or something. Hey, that's fun. That's cool. And it doesn't necessarily have to stretch out a race to 8 rounds.
Yeah, I agree with that. They did that in junior drag racing too. They had a constellation thing, which my brother got into, and my brother, um, he raced Steven Densham,
Ah,
Densham's
okay.
son,
Yeah.
in that constellation, and I believe he actually won that constellation race.
Yeah.
But kind of like what you're saying, I got an example real quick, and we're getting pressed on time here, so I'll be quick. Um, Funny Car Chaos, which is also an excellent series, so awesome. They do like, I mean, so you're gonna race no matter what. So if you go to a Funny Car Chaos, you're not gonna get bumped out and have to go home. How they do it is A field, B field, C field, and I think they go even to D field, depending on how many cars there are. So no matter where you qualify in the ladder, um, you'll get to race. So, I like that. And I think I can't remember who else. I thought maybe at the March meet or at the Hot Rod reunion. And don't quote me on this, but I think with Top Fuel out there, I think they had the main deal A field, and I want to say they actually had a B field at that
Hmm.
race, which I want to say, doing some reading, I think Brendan Murray won B field, but without getting too deep into that, I just think that's pretty cool. Like PDRA, for example, I know they have their elite top dragster, and then after that, I think they have their regular top dragster. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to have a challenge out there, which is why I have my car plumbed for a whole heckload, shitload of, excuse my language, nitrous as an insurance policy. But it would be nice to know, somehow if somebody can figure out a way to, or if you don't qualify, you could still race in a constellation or B field or something. That way your trip and all that's not wasted. So
Yeah, and I think it would be smart for tracks to pick that up as opposed to just saying, well, let's have a couple of rounds of buybacks because that'll build the purse, that'll pay our bills. I get why tracks do it,
yeah,
but I think a smart, savvy promoter and or track would realize like, hey, if we brought back more brackets instead of just one top ET category, what if we had four?
yep,
They were broken out by, a performance window of ET times. Then, you know, you'd have the opportunity to have, instead of one top ET winner, you'd have four bracket winners of bracket 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
Dad's always kind of said this, talking about his time with ProGas and stuff, was that, they realized pretty quickly, like, hey, there's only one winner. But if we have more classes, if we have more groupings of less people, then, there's a potential for four people to walk away winners with some money in their pocket, or, that kind of a thing that will make drivers want to come back and compete again because there's more
yep,
opportunities there. If there's a consolation race that you can get into and didn't go your way first round, but then you did really well in the consolation race and you had a good time and maybe you won that, like, again, it's added opportunities for people to have, won or done well through the day or made maybe their entry back or something. That'll make it affordable and easy for people to come back and want to do it more. So I just think there's
I
some
agree.
there's some room for that,
Yeah,
for addition of brackets again to bracket racing, instead of just everybody's lumped into one. Are you running a trans brake and electronics or not? Like, that's where we're at right now. It's like foot brake or button, and that's all there is. It's like there should be, I wish they'd bring back more brackets.
yeah. So we got our 2 minute warning here on this podcast. So basically, you know, I just want to, if any of the promoters or track operators or anything watching this, and we're trying to start somewhere and just have another cool podcast to listen to with three guys that know what they're talking about. I just gotta say, I know there's a lot of work that goes on behind the lines. Just got to say thank you to the promoters and to the organizers, the tracks, Coastal Plains, XRP, just all the tracks that are going to be doing all these great series. IHRA coming back with their Hot Rod Classic. There's just so many cool promoters and tracks and sponsors and so on. So I just, just a
Which I
shout
think
out to
that's a
those
great
guys.
example of people getting excited for there being more categories again. That's
Yeah.
the appeal to
Yeah.
that, is that there's, super rod, quick rod, like top dragster, like they're bringing all of those back to one event. So I think
Yeah.
people are hungry for more variety.
Yep, absolutely. So we're pretty much wrapping it up here, and thanks again for tuning in to Diggers TV podcast. Every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. is when we release it, and please share, please. We would really appreciate it. Any feedback you have, just let us have it.
We'll catch you next week.
Thank you for watching. See ya.